And what if I told you that everything you pursue as success might be exactly what keeps you trapped? In this video, we're going to explore Erich Fromm's revolutionary analysis of how modern society turned human beings into hostages of an illusion called success. You'll understand how after the Industrial Revolution, we learned to measure our worth not by who we are, but by what we own, do, or appear to be. We'll unveil the psychological prison that keeps us working non-stop seeking external validation. Driven by the fear of not being loved, you'll discover why modern success is a form of obedience disguised as virtue, and most importantly, how recognizing this trap can be the first step to your true freedom. This isn't just philosophical theory, it's about your life, here and now. Stay until the end, because the final revelation might completely change the way you live. Imagine waking up every day and feeling you're never enough. No matter how much you work, no matter what you achieve, there's always this voice whispering, you need more, you need to be more. This isn't just your voice. It's the voice of an entire society echoing inside your soul. Erich Fromm, one of the most brilliant psychoanalysts of the 20th century, dedicated his life to unraveling this mystery. Why do successful people feel so empty inside? Why the more we have, the less we seem to be? His answer is devastating and liberating at the same time. We live in a culture of having where our identity, our worth, and even our right to exist depend on what we possess, what we do, and how we appear. But this wasn't always human reality. This is a recent construction, a collective deception that began just a few centuries ago and today dominates every aspect of our lives. The truth is that modern success is not an achievement, it's a prison, and you're inside it without even knowing. If this disturbs you, if something inside you recognizes this truth, then hit the bell, subscribe to the channel, and let's dismantle this illusion together, because what you'll discover here can free not just your mind, but your entire way of living. To understand how success became a prison, we need to go back in time before the Industrial Revolution. Human life was different. People worked, yes, but work had another meaning. A craftsman created with his hands, a farmer cultivated the land. There was a direct connection between the human being and the fruit of their work. A person's worth was linked to their wisdom, their integrity, their contribution to the community, not to how much they accumulated. Then something changed drastically between the 18th and 19th centuries. Machines arrived, factories emerged, and with them, a new type of human being, the worker no longer a creator, but a cog in the machine. Fromm observed precisely that in this historical moment, human beings began to be treated as just another commodity. Their value became measured not by who they were, but by their ability to produce, to generate profit, to be useful to the system. And thus was born the great illusion of modern success. Time became money, rest became laziness, and human worth became tied to productivity. Schools changed no longer to educate souls, but to train obedient workers. Children were taught to sit still for hours to memorize information, to follow orders without questioning, and to measure their worth through grades, not through creativity, not through wisdom, but through obedience. This was no accident. It was by design. Industrial society needed people who would accept working long hours in inhumane conditions, people who wouldn't question, who would find meaning in serving the machine. And so a powerful narrative was created. If you work hard, if you strive, if you obey, you will succeed, and success will bring you happiness. This promise was repeated generation after generation until it became our truth. But Fromm warns us, this promise was never real because the kind of success modern society offers cannot fill the human soul. It can only temporarily distract it. Erich Fromm, in his revolutionary book To Have or To Be, presents us with two completely different modes of existence, the having mode and the being mode. In the having mode, your identity depends on what you possess, what you do, and how you appear. You don't just have a car, you're defined by the car you drive. You don't just have a job, you are your position, your social status, your salary. In this mode, when these things fluctuate, your identity fluctuates too. You lose your job and feel you've lost yourself. You lose money and feel you've lost value. Someone has more than you and you feel less. This is the prison because your sense of worth is never secure, always depends on something external, something that can be taken away, compared, or lost. And so you work non-stop, not because you love what you do, but because you're afraid of not being enough, afraid of losing what you have, afraid of being invisible, forgotten, or rejected. Fromm observed that in modern society, we've been conditioned to believe that having is the only way to be, that our worth comes from what we accumulate, not from what we cultivate within us. But there's another mode, the being mode. In this mode, your identity doesn't depend on possessions or performances. You exist simply by existing. Your worth is intrinsic, doesn't need to be proven or conquered. You create because you love creating. You work because you find meaning. You relate because you value connection, not because you need validation. In this mode, you can lose everything and still know who you are, because your essence isn't in any object, in any title, in any bank account. It's inside you, and no one can take that away. But here's the problem. Modern society doesn't want you to live in being mode, because people who live like this aren't easy to control. They don't work themselves to exhaustion out of fear. They don't buy things just to impress others. They don't sacrifice their soul for external approval, and that's dangerous for a system that profits from your insecurity. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, gave us powerful tools to understand this prison. He spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to face the world. The persona is necessary. Yes, everyone needs one to navigate socially. But Jung warned us, when we confuse the mask with our true self, we lose our soul. And this is exactly what modern success does. It forces us to build increasingly elaborate personas. The successful professional, the perfect parent, the always positive person, always productive, always in control. But behind this mask there's a shadow. Everything we cannot show: our exhaustion, our confusion, our fears, our raw and imperfect humanity. Jung said that the more rigid the persona, the larger and more dangerous the shadow, because what we repress doesn't disappear. It just hides, waiting for the moment to explode. And then we see successful people collapsing. Burnout, anxiety, depression, addictions, existential crises. Not because they failed, but because they succeeded too much in the wrong persona. They sacrificed being for having, and the soul demanded its price. The truth Jung revealed is that true success doesn't come from perfecting the mask, but from integrating it with the shadow, from accepting that you're human, imperfect, in process and still complete. But society doesn't want that. It wants your persona, always polished, always performing, always consuming, and thus the prison remains. Søren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, wrote about something profound: the despair of being someone. He observed that many people live in despair without even realizing it, because they're too busy trying to be someone they're not. Kierkegaard said, "This is the most dangerous despair, when you lose yourself trying to become what others expect of you. You work the wrong job because it looks impressive. You marry the wrong person because it seems safe. You live the wrong life because it looks right in the world's eyes. And then one day you wake up and realize you've built an entire life on top of a lie, that you were never truly free, just obedient. This is the cruelest prison, because you yourself built the bars." Kierkegaard challenges us to have the courage to be ourselves, even when that means disappointing others, even when that means looking like failure in society's eyes. He said that the most frightening thing is to accept yourself completely, because that means abandoning the security of external approval, but it's also the only form of real freedom. And here's the connection with Fromm's vision. Modern success is disguised despair. It's the desperate attempt to be someone important to compensate for the emptiness of not being yourself. The more you pursue this kind of success, the farther you get from your truth and the deeper the prison becomes. Fromm was relentless in his analysis of modern society. He wasn't just criticizing individuals, he was unmasking an entire system, a system that profits from our insecurity. Think about it. Advertising doesn't sell products, it sells the promise that you'll be loved, admired, accepted if you buy that thing. Social media doesn't offer connection. It offers validation through numbers, likes, followers, comments, each one a dose of external approval that never completely satisfies. The job market doesn't value people. It values productivity. You're only as good as your last result, your last delivery, your last success. And when you fail, even from exhaustion, you're disposable. Fromm called this the market society, where everything, including human beings, is treated as a commodity. And the great deception is that this society convinces us that this is normal, that this is the only way to live, that working until exhaustion is virtue, that sacrificing your soul for success is maturity. But it's not. It's just a sophisticated form of slavery, because you're not free when your worth depends on something external. You're a hostage to others' opinions, hostage to the market, hostage to the system that profits from your fear of not being enough. And the most disturbing truth is that this system doesn't want you to be happy. It wants you to be productive, doesn't want you to find peace. It wants you to keep searching, buying, working, performing, because your dissatisfaction is the fuel that keeps the machine running. So how do you leave this prison? Fromm doesn't just leave us with the diagnosis, he offers us a path first. You need to make a conscious choice to stop measuring your worth by what you have and start cultivating who you are. This means asking, what makes me feel alive? Not what makes me look successful. What brings peace to my soul? Not what brings envy to others. Second, you need to develop what Fromm calls productive orientation, not in the capitalist sense, but in the sense of creating from your essence, working because you love it, not because you need to prove something, creating because it's your nature, not because you need approval. Third, you need to cultivate the courage to be unpopular, to disappoint, to not meet expectations. This isn't selfishness, it's authenticity, because you can't be faithful to yourself while simultaneously pleasing everyone. Fourth, you need to learn to be with yourself in silence, without distractions, without performances. Just being. This is terrifying at first because you encounter everything you've been fleeing, but it's also where healing begins. Fifth, you need to redefine success, not as accumulation, but as alignment. Success isn't having more, it's being more yourself. It's not climbing higher, it's going deeper into your truth. And then something extraordinary happens. You start living no longer to impress, but to express, no longer with fear, but with purpose. No longer trapped, but free. The change Fromm proposes isn't just individual, it's revolutionary. Because when you stop participating in the illusion, you begin to dismantle it. When you stop measuring your worth by productivity, you question an entire system. When you choose to be, instead of to have, you become a living contradiction to the market society. And that's dangerous for those who profit from your fear, but it's liberating for everyone who's ready to wake up. Fromm believed that individual transformation is the path to social transformation, not through violent revolutions, but through a revolution in consciousness. When you change your way of existing, you change the energy around you. You inspire others, not by what you say, but by what you are. And that's true change, not forced, but contagious. Think about it. If more people started living in being mode, what would happen to the advertising that sells insecurity, to the work that exploits, until exhaustion, to the culture that celebrates? Only having everything would start to crumble, not because it was attacked, but because it was abandoned. And in place of that culture of emptiness disguised as success, a culture of presence would begin to emerge, of authenticity, of true life. This isn't utopia, it's possibility, and it begins with you. So here we are at the end of this journey. You now know that modern success is a prison. You understand how we got here, how the Industrial Revolution transformed human beings into commodities. You know, the difference between having and being, between persona and essence, between the despair of being someone and the courage to be yourself. And now comes the question, most important of all. What will you do with this truth? Living in being mode in a society of having is swimming against the current. It's being misunderstood, it's looking like failure in the eyes of those still trapped. But it's also the only way to be alive, truly alive. Not just existing, but living. Not just having, but being. Fromm left us a legacy, not of ready-made answers, but of essential questions. Who am I without my masks? What is truly important to my soul? How can I live authentically in this world? These questions don't have a single answer. Each person needs to discover their own. This is my invitation, not to have more success, but to be more yourself, not to impress the world, but to honor your soul, not to win their game, but to create your own. Because in the end, when everything fades away, when achievements turn to dust and applause falls silent, the only thing that matters is whether you lived or just existed, whether you were free or just obedient, whether you were yourself or a copy of what they expected. This is the truth that Fromm dedicated his life to reveal. Thank you for making it here. If this video touched something in you, share it, because someone you know might need to hear exactly this. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all learning to be free together.